It's tough to be an adult learner. Not only does college take up all of your time, it's also not cheap. And the icing on the cake is that if you're going to a normal classroom, you may be studying in a sea of young folks. So today we have a question from Cora. I'm going back to college at 36. How do I get over the fact that I'll be sitting in class with 17-year-olds?
I feel like this is a question that a lot of adult learners ask, especially those who aren't going back to online. They're going back to a brick and mortar, traditional, not night school sort of environment, right? And they're going to go to a school where a bunch of 17 to 22-year-olds are doing their 17 to 22-year-old thing. And it's different because you might have a mortgage, a family, kids, a job, and it's just like two different worlds colliding. So the first thing that I'll say is that as a faculty member at a school, I've had many adult learners in my classrooms that are, apart from that adult learner, just 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 22-year-olds, whatever. I think at the most I've ever had maybe two at a time. But I've got to say that whenever I have an adult learner enter my classroom on the first day of class, I feel this intense amount of excitement and appreciation for the potential there. I'll give a couple of examples. We had one guy, we'll call him Joe, and Joe was a delight because he had no vanity or ego, and he knew that he was a little bit older than other people, but that did not bother him, which it should not. And so he came in ready to have a good time and to learn. And everybody was at first they were like, oh, is this guy going to be cool? What? We got our Snapchat and everything, and we're being 17, and is this guy going to be cool or is he going to look down on us? So they're nervous at first, but man, that guy was just goofy and fun. He would give me crap as the professor, but in a good-natured way, and everybody loved him. He would always ask for help and be proactive, and he knew his stuff. He was one of the best writers in the class, but he was a joy to have. I've had a student who was maybe in her 60s or something, and she was coming back to school to finish her bachelor's degree after a long time, and she was very motherly, not to a suffocating or not to too much of an extent, but the students liked having her there because she was also from New York, and so she would state her mind and she would call it like she saw it, and so people just appreciated her personality and who she was. And then finally, we had this one guy. He was former military. He was maybe late 30s, and he was a very quiet guy. And he didn't participate in discussion a lot, but when he had something to say, everybody got quiet because they knew it was going to be deep, and they knew it was going to be insightful because he did not open his mouth if he didn't have something useful to say. All three of those students did really well in my classes, and I think that probably the thing that was the reason for that is they were all very confident in who they were, and they didn't let the fact that they were surrounded by young people detract from their sense of confidence, and they used their age and their experience as a way to kind of help lighten the mood or to have a good time or to demonstrate and set an example or just to add a lot of wisdom, and it was really, really cool.
Yeah, my story comes from when I was studying in my undergrad. I was in a business operations course, which you would think would be a little bit on the boring side, and it's a classroom that is full of 19, 20, 21-year-olds, except for one student. This gentleman was somewhere in his mid to late 30s, and he got more out of that class than the rest of the class combined. This guy came to class having done all of the reading, and he had lists of questions for the professor, and he had a list of comments for the professor. Every time that we talked about a topic, he would come in the next week talking about how he had applied it in his workplace. And when the professor gave out free interview advice, he put that to the test, came in and told the class about it. In the interview, he had used the details that our professor had given us. And they didn't just offer him the job that he was interviewing for, they offered him the boss's job, who supervises the job that he had applied for. So this is a gentleman who got so much out of the class. And when Cliff and I were looking at what makes a successful back to college adult learner, we came up with a few different areas that are absolutely vital to making sure that you're successful.
First things first, you have to remember and you have to accept that being in this classroom with 17-year-olds does not mean that you failed in some way. And I think that's what a lot of people's unspoken problem is at first, keep in mind that you've gone a different path. You've got life experience. You have done things that these students, these young students, are just beginning to dream about, just thinking about, just preparing for. And so you bring a lot to this classroom. You've done a lot, and you've gone your own path. Whatever brought you to this point is your story. That's who you are, and that's important. So do not waste time thinking to yourself, man, I failed, I've messed up, and accept where you are. And remember that you have a lot to offer here, and it's really, really cool. It's a great opportunity.
Another thing to think about, you are very experienced if you're an adult learner compared to the kids that are going to be in the classroom with you.
Yeah.
And it's really important that while you be confident, you don't come across as arrogant, because that can make or break your chances at making friends in a course, and honestly being an asset to the learning environment instead of a liability to the learning environment. So make sure that when you walk in there, you are coming as somebody who might have experiences to offer, but is also there to learn.
Last two pieces of advice that I'll give. Number one, be friendly and open. Students might be a little bit nervous about you at first, in the same way that anybody who meets somebody that is just different from who they're used to might be at first. But just be consistently friendly and open, and you'll be surprised at how many friends you make. I had students ended up, 17-year-old students who ended up voluntarily doing group projects with older students just because they'd become friends, and it was really, really cool. And the final piece of advice from me is participate in class discussion. That's a great time, honestly, for adult learners to shine. You don't want to talk too much in the same way that nobody wants to talk too much, nobody wants to be that student, but you've got stuff to share, and don't discount how valuable your life experience might be to these students, or might be an interesting conversation topic the professor can work with. It can actually be really cool.
One last parting piece of advice. A lot of the students that you're going to be in class with haven't quite figured out what they want to major in, or they're going to change their major a few different times before graduation. One of the things that I think makes an adult learner in a learning environment so advantageous and so helpful to have for other students in the classroom is that you know where you're going. They can see it in your eyes. You know why you're there. You know what you are hoping to accomplish. So take that focus and just make sure that that defines your experience in that classroom. So if you like this video, go ahead and check out our 3-part series that we got from a Reddit question. This is a adult learner whose parents-in-law were not supportive of her going back to college. And then also check out the link in the description below. We have a 7-step checklist at our website where we take you from no degree to diploma in hand.
It's super easy.